What's up? Welcome. I am so glad you are here listening and spending time with me today. Release Your Inner Power talks about life, the trenches, the decisions, and the wins that we have now, today, and that have experienced in our past. There are stories, encouragement, tools, and tips to take those next steps to release that inner power and connect with something that is said or someone, a special guest maybe, that will boost your week. I am your host, Shauna B. Here we go. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here and listening. This time I'm going to take a little trip. I'm going to take you guys back to a trip that was super transformational for me in so many different ways. And I want to share it with you. Maybe you can, have a little travel trip with me. So I was sitting in my living room with my mom, and it was like, I don't even know, February sometime, maybe even earlier. I can't even remember. This trip was quite a few years ago, but I think it really was a pivoting point in my life, of proving myself, as well as many other things. I get this text message from one of my friends that I went to school with and that I have known for a very long time. And she's like, "Hey, sound good?" Question mark. And it's a picture of a kayak and we're on this river and it looks like the desert by the rocks. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, let's see. So I go into the thing that she sent me and started reading it, and it's talking about kayaking on this river, and depending on where you go is how long it is. That people drive you down there and take you in, drop your boats in, and then they pick you up and you can stay, 1, 2, 3 nights, however you want to stay, many nights you want to stay on this river. And there's hot springs that you can go and explore. I'm like, yes, please sign me up. Like gut instinct hit, like, yes, please sign me up. And so I sent her a message back and I'm like, I'm in. And then I figured it all out. Like it was like, I had no sitter. Okay. I had no idea if I had the time off. I had no idea if it was going to work in my schedule, nor did I care because I was totally in. And I figured all of the things out that moms do, right? With the childcare situation and getting time off of work and then figuring out like where I'm even flying into exactly, like what airport. And we came up with this plan. So then I get emailed the itinerary. We're going on this, it's like a 3, 4 day, no, I think it was a 3 day excursion, 2 nights. And we're flying into Vegas. And I'm like, okay, and we're staying one night in this canyon with the kayaks, right? I'm like, okay. And then a couple weeks go by and it's like, oh my gosh, but you know, the Narrows is so close to that. And she's like, I want to do the Narrows too. And she's like, we can just drive there and do the Narrows since we're going for this much time. We can do the Narrows one day and then we can do Black Canyon the other 2 days. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good, and I'm in. Not really looking up stuff or knowing how far away it was, but either way, I was down. I thought it was cool and we were going to do more. So then she tells me, oh, and by the way, you have to get some waders because if we're gonna hike the Narrows, it's like that time of season where there's like, bacteria that can like eat your skin. I'm like, what? I've already bought my tickets. I've already said yes. And then I'm like, oh, and instantly I was like, what? Bacteria that eat your skin? What the heck? And like all the things in my head started to go to try to talk me out of it, right? And I'm like, okay, I took a deep breath in and I was like, she said waiters. I get some waiters, hike the Narrows, still can do it. Big deal. La-ti-da, push it to the side, get my waiters, check, done. And then another week goes by and she's like, oh, and when you're in the hot springs, there's like some, I don't know, like brain eating amoeba or something that you can't get the water up your nose. So don't submerge your head into the hot springs. What? What? A way to sell me on some hikes, You know what I'm saying? I was just like, oh my God. So then my brain started doing the whole thing again, where it was like, oh my gosh, you really want to do this? And la la la, and was like totally freaking out. And at the same time, like, I don't have to put my head underwater, but why was I even making it a thing? Probably because I was doing something out of my comfort zone. I was doing something different. I've kayaked before, I've hiked before. I've done all of that. I just didn't have all these added fun things that I was going to have to work through in the process. Again, don't put my head underwater, figured it out, moving on. So every once in a while, these things would come up in my brain, but I still worked through it and I was fine. As it got closer, I was so excited to do the trip. It didn't even occur to me anymore. So I fly in, I think it was, we'll say Thursday night. Okay. So I fly in on a Thursday night. I have friends that live down in Vegas and I chose to go stay with them to visit them because we were meeting early, early in the morning, like 6 a.m. on Friday morning, because we had to drive from Vegas to Utah, which was about a 3 hour drive to catch this shuttle that was going to take us to the Narrows at 9. And so I stayed the night with some friends, visited them, got up really early in the morning, met my girl. We rented a car. We drove 3 hours to Utah, and then we met up with our other friends that were coming. We had two other friends that were coming, so there was four of us total, and they met us at the Narrows shuttle pickup place. And so we go there and we're in this like it's so crazy. You fly into Vegas. It's like 75, 80 degrees outside. It's like warm, like shorts weather. As we drive to Utah, I am not kidding you. It is freezing cold. Like we're talking layers, stocking hats, a couple pairs of pants, possibly gloves, like this whole thing. I was like, my brain is tripping right now. Like, I just left warm weather and I drive 3 hours and I'm legit in layers right now. This is so crazy. We go into the park. We go into the park. It's sunshiny-ish in some parts. The clouds are starting to roll in. We're getting our waders on, getting ready. We go take the shuttle up to the Narrows, and they drop us off at this one place at the Narrows. And if you don't know what the Narrows is, it's a carved out canyon with like feet and feet of rocks. It's like a river made path, but the rocks are so high. It's like skyscraper high in some places. Some places not so high, but it's like feet, like 10, 20, 30. It's like feet. And it's these rocks that have these carvings from water out, and it's like 17 to 20 miles of these carvings and just this like river. So to hike the Narrows, you are hiking it in water. You are in water. Now, the temperature here was way cold. With waders on, I still had layers. We're talking stocking cap, couple shirt layers, sweatshirt. I think I might even have had a coat on at one point, maybe the whole time. Couple layers of pants with my waders over the top. There is a picture of us at the beginning of this trip where we're standing at the beginning of the river, and it's all like three of us. And I am not kidding you, it begins to snow. I'm like, what? And it's like little flecks of snow that are coming down. I'm like, all right, we're doing this thing. And it was such a trip to walk in water in the cold with waders on and just be cold but not get wet. Like I was not wet at all for obvious reasons, but just the cold all around me. And then as you're hiking and you're going through these carved out areas and you're having to navigate, where the deep water is, where you can step, and you have to be very careful because you don't want to fall in, because then water is going to get in your waders, you're going to get wet, cold, la-ti-da, hike is over, right? So you have to be pretty careful where you put your feet. And there's a river. And so some of the times the river wants to move your foot and put it somewhere else that you don't want to put it at. And you have to be really careful with it. So as we're going through these carvings, there's like really cool waterfalls that are on the side. There's like moss and this like greenery going up some of the sides of the rocks. And just there was times where it was just us four, where we were going through these canyons and this river, and it was so freaking awesome. Like it's only us. There's like nobody else around. Now, yes, there was people on the hike that had passed through, but not a ton of people. It was freaking amazing. And we kept we kept taking all of these pictures of us like standing in the river and peeking around these rocks and doing all this really fun stuff. And at times it would get pretty deep up to our waist and then down to our ankles. And every time we went around like a major corner, it was like just rock formations and the way the rocks looked and how it swirled and how the water was running through it. And then, in some parts, patches of blue sky would come through. And we just kept saying, oh man, just one more corner, just one more corner. We're going to hike up because we kept wanting to see like the next thing. And every time I'm telling you, it was just like one more corner. We'd been hiking for a while, like probably 4 or 5 hours at this point. And we're like, how far in are we? I think we were in like 7 miles in at this point, and it was so hard to turn around. Every time we were like, okay, this is it, we're going to turn around. Our curiosity and just what awaits around the next bend and how beautiful it was, or what if there was another waterfall, or what if there was another, like rock formation, or just another cool spot to discover. What if we're missing out almost? It was like FOMO. It was so cool and interesting how curious we were. But we finally called it because we had to turn back around. And it's so interesting too, because going in 7 miles, having all of those beautiful pictures and all of those like different scenes and climbing around on the rocks and investigating it and then coming back, how different just looking, turning and looking behind you is and going out. So we're hiking all the way out. We get out, and of course we're like, my gosh, that was so cool. I wish we could have gone longer. We have to come back, like the whole thing. Our plan was to also, when we were done with the Narrows, was to go up and do Angel's Landing and finish the day with Angel's Landing. Now, one, we had hiked and got too excited about the Narrows that we ended up missing out on Angel's Landing for multiple reasons. And the fact that it snowed and it was probably icy and slippery, we weren't exactly thinking it was probably a good idea to do Angel's Landing. So we figured, okay, we're going to go get some tacos. We're going to go get some food, and then we're going to have to head back to Vegas. Now, mind you, this is all in the same day. So we get dinner, we load up on dinner, and we are driving back from Utah, 3-hour drive to Vegas to our hotel. And we were staying at the dam because that's where we were going to meet the guys that were going to drop our kayaks into the river. Now, this was crazy. We were so tired. We'd been up, I don't even know how long. It is probably 10 o'clock at night as we're driving, and we're playing these songs on the radio where it was like, we did roulette for her, like her Spotify lists, and we never knew what song was coming up. We're talking heavy metal stuff, like Pantera all the way to like Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And anything you can think of in the middle, just a total mixture of all the things, right? And every time a song would come on, we would have to dance and sing and like pep each other up for this 3-hour drive. It was the longest drive ever. We were so tired. We made it to the hotel. We slept for like a hot minute because I think we got to the hotel at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we had to meet the guys to drop us in the river at, I think it was 8 o'clock the next morning. 8 o'clock the next morning. So we get our rumps up out of bed and we meet these guys. They give us the whole safety thing with the kayaks because we rented them from this place. They drive us down to the base of Cooley Dam, like Grand Cooley Dam. Really? That's where I live. No, the base of the dam in Vegas. Holy smokes. Anyway, real life right here with the brain. And so they drop us off at the base of Hoover Dam. So when you look up, like to your left is the entire dam. It's like, I can't remember what lake is up there. I should know, but I can't remember. And we're right at the base. And there's even like a little rope that says, don't go past this, la ti da, which is fine because we were going to go right and we were going to go up the river anyways. But they drop us off at the base. They get us all settled and then they peace out and they say, we had a pickup that was miles ahead of us at a different place at a port that we needed to kayak to in 2 days, which was fine. So here we are. We are so excited. Now it is 75 degrees, maybe more like, maybe 80s, between 75 and 80. We are literally in shorts, tank top, and swimsuits with our life jackets on and in our kayaks. So much warmer in like a perfect way, right? To like move through this adventure. We did the cold stuff and the snow stuff already, pushed through, and now we're in our kayaks. So on this river, it's so cool, you guys. There's like hot springs and hikes and like all these explorer areas that you can go through, caves and all this stuff from doing this dam and mining and all of that are along this river. And so as we go, we're picking points where we're stopping and like climbing out, tying our boats up to things and going up to these hot springs or these hikes just to explore and what was going on in this river and these canyons. And even as we're kayaking through this river, looking up at cliffside, because again, we're in like a carved out, river cliff area, and we can see like the really old equipment that they used to build the dam and to mine in this area. And it's still there. Like parts of it is still there. It's such a trip. So again, after taking pictures and all that jazz, we go and we're starting to pick our hot springs that we want to go to. The first one we went to was like this cave that went really far back into the side of the hill, and it was like a pool basically that you could sit in. It was so hot, it was like a hot tub. It was kind of a trip because I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and anytime that we're in like, rivers, running water, anything like that, it's like super cold and we have to get used to it. And so as I'm walking through this river or stream that's leading out of this cave slash like hot tub area, my brain was just like, I could not wrap. I'm like, it's warm. Like it is warm. I'm not cold here. I'm like in a tank top, short swimsuit, and I am like warm. It was a total trip for me, but I loved it. I loved it. So we sat in this little hot tub area and did a little cave searching, if you will, and then on to the next. We get back in our kayaks. We're kayaking through. We did this at 4 more stops, going around different curves. We had about 9 miles to cover, 7 to 9 miles to cover before getting to camp. And we would go around different corners and we knew where we'd stop off. And each hot springs that we would go explore was either, I don't know, that like some of them had ropes that you had to climb up or ladders that you had to climb up to get to the pools that you could sit in. Some of them were just like waterfalls like next to the rocks. There were so many different kinds and there's so many different spots. It's hard to explain, but it was so fun. We were singing, we were laughing, we're telling jokes, coming up with all this stuff. And the whole day was just that, bebopping around different hot springs, different exploring and kayaking somewhere on the river. It was so much fun. I think it was like starting to get dark when we decided that we needed to get to camp. So it was probably like 9 o'clock at night at this point. And we kayaked to camp, set up camp. As the sun's setting, we're making dinner. We housed that dinner. We'd only had snacks all day. We had breakfast and snacks all day. So we housed like this huge dinner that was so yummy. It was steak. We did steak out in the wilderness. And we got into our tent, slept for the night, and got up the next morning, had another big breakfast because we had to kayak 7 miles to get out of this canyon. And after having 2 days of all this amazing exploring and like going around all these corners in the narrows and walking through this water and having this amazing experience and getting into this, kayak and getting into the warm water and hot springs and sitting in the hot springs, like the next morning there was a trail that led from camp up to these hot springs. And we sat up there like in a hot tub for a couple of hours before we left after eating breakfast. And we came back down and packed up camp. And as we're packing up camp, it was beautiful blue sky, no clouds in the sky. It was awesome. I was like, man, this is going to be such a sweet day. We're just going to take our time because as we're leaving, there was caves that we wanted to go in that were emerald green. And they were like super awesome that we wanted to go exploring before we like got picked up and driven out of this canyon. And as we are packing up camp, the water is starting to like ripple and the wind starting to pick up. And I remember looking at my friend Eric and being like, well, that's making me a little bit nervous. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't supposed to be that windy today. It was supposed to be a little bit, but not that bad. And I remember looking at him and being like, what direction is this wind in? And he's like, we're gonna be paddling against it. And I instantly was like, I just want to get all my stuff packed up and I want to get on this river because who knows how long this is going to take to get out because we had to paddle to the pickup spot. There's no like side spot or side trail where somebody's coming to get you. Like nobody's coming to save you. You have to paddle to get out of this. So we get all of our stuff packed up. We're launching and we're starting to paddle and the wind just starts picking up. And I'm talking like wind. I don't even know how to I don't know how fast it was. It felt ridiculous. Like I'm talking every time I'm carving my paddle into this river and I'm pulling with all of my being on both sides, one to keep my boat straight and two to just keep carving and carving and carving. And I'm looking at the rocks next to me and I'm moving like it felt like a freaking centimeter every time I carved because I would pull and it would push me back, pull, push me back. And it was like, talk about 4 steps forward and 3 steps back. It was crazy for 7 freaking miles. 7 miles. The wind did not let up at all. There was a time where I had to put the back of my kayak against the rocks to rest just so I could finish getting out of there. It was relentless. There were times where I was screaming at the wind, and I'm just like, get you, please let up for 7 miles. We're going to have to do this. Like, we were going to miss our pickup time. We had a time that we had to be there by. It, it was insane. It was insane. So me and my bestie were up in the front and we were just carving like I'm just like no nose to the ground, grinding, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. I'm paddling, I'm paddling. I'm like singing songs to myself. I'm saying things to myself. I'm getting tired. I'm having to flip the script in my head. There is no this hurts too much or I can't do this or I am unable to finish this canyon. That didn't exist. The only way out was to keep going. And I had to go against the wind. It was crazy. Like, imagine yourself sitting in this kayak and just digging hard, and paddle, 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 paddle. And you're like barely moving. And you're just like, oh my gosh, how long do I have to do this? At one point, we thought we had got to the point where we were our pickup spot, and we pulled off into this little cove. And I remember sitting on the beach and she's like, let me walk up and see if it's up here really quick. And I remember being so depleted that I, when I heard her come back around and she said, no, this isn't it. I can see, it's probably up there because we saw a boat launch and we saw a dock and all that stuff. So we were having to head up a little bit further. I would say probably another half a mile paddling. And just from that cove to that half a mile, I remember thinking when she started walking back to me, like, I can't sit here very long because if I rest too much, it's going to be 10,000 times harder to like get back into it and start paddling this half a mile. And this half a mile seeing the finish line, most of the time when I see a finish line or I know the end's coming, I'm like, heck yeah. And I can like go faster, right? You like give it all you got. But when you have been giving almost all you've got for that long, I was like, I don't know how much I got in here, but I got to do it until we get to this spot. And that half a mile was probably the hardest half a mile that I've ever had to do, just energy wise and strength wise after what I just did. So my bestie gets there first, tells the guy, and he ends up telling her, I waited for you guys. We were 2 hours later than what we were supposed to be. That's what we were going up against. It was supposed to take us 2.5 hours to paddle out of there, and it took us like 5 hours to paddle out of there because of all of that craziness. It was bananas. I get out and I remember pulling my boat and doing all of the things like pulling my boat out at one point during the trip because the hot springs was so hot, it like unglued the bottom of my Keen sandal. And so I had like this floppy shoe that I was walking around with, and that was instantly went into the garbaggio when I came out of the river. And once I sat down, I ate everything else I had in my bag. Like I ate everything else. I drank the rest of my water. I just sat there and felt like a deflated balloon. Like I had nothing left. I was so exhausted. So exhausted. All of the exploring we've done, all of the like driving and then the fun we had and staying up late and waking up early and all this stuff and then slapping on the wind at the end. Holy smokes. It was rough. It was rough. At the same time, it was one of the best trips of my life. The one of the best trips of my life. Here I was thinking I was done and we had to hurry up and get to the airport because we had planes to catch. Like we weren't staying another night. We had planes that we had to catch at the airport. We had, I think, what was it? I think we had 4 hours from when we got to shore. We went and got something to eat and then went straight to the airport, like not really any time to change our clothes or anything. And I remember getting to the airport and there, because of the wind, there was storms coming in and all this craziness that they canceled a bunch of flights. My bestie got out in the nick of time and my plane got delayed like I don't even know how many hours. Like I didn't get home. My plane was supposed to take off at like 6:30 p.m. and I didn't get home until like I don't even know 6 a.m., 7 a.m. the next day because of how delayed my plane was. It was crazy. I was so tired by the time I got home. I ordered a ton of food from this local restaurant that I love, a ton of breakfast food and enough for my family and I. I ate some and then I was like, I have to go sleep. And I probably slept for like 8 hours straight. Woke up, ate some more, and then slept all night. I was so tired. It was crazy. After that, I was fully recovered. But back to the best trip of my life. And here's why. One, I totally listened to my gut in this trip. It was freaking transformational for me. I was in a place where I was newly divorced, trying to find my life, trying to put the pieces back together. What do I want? What do I want to do? And all of these things that interested me with my friend texting me this one message, what I say is out of the blue, right? Everything happens for a reason. I went on this trip with the things that were trying to stop me with the brain-eating amoeba and this bacteria that was supposed to be in the water, problem solved those, moved on. Then the whole guilt of the mom leaving and going and leaving her kids to go have fun and all the things. I hadn't really, I've done that sometimes, but I hadn't really left for a while just to make sure that my kids were straight and they were good and everything was fine with them after me and their dad split up, to make sure that it was a good spot to leave. And it was perfect freaking timing, by the way. And so I leave and go on this trip. I get to see all these freaking awesome things. I get to challenge myself through fears, nervous, excited feelings. I got to explore places in Utah that I've never seen before, as well as in Nevada into Arizona. It's like right on the border of three different places. Anyway, all of these places I would have never known about if I would have said no. Not to mention, I got to push myself to the limit. I really got inside my head and knew how I talked to myself, how I encouraged myself, how when shit goes down and things get tough, how I pull myself out of it, how I make things happen, and how I can get out of it because nobody is coming to save you. I realized so many things on that trip. I realized how much power that I have for myself to make things happen. I realized how I speak to myself and how and what I need to do to get to that pickup spot, to get to that finish line, to get to all of those things, and how being okay with it, like the pain and the suffering and the yelling at the wind, like how all of that changed who I was on the inside, and freaking like released my inner power like no other. It proved to myself what I was capable of. And I took all of those lessons and all of that learning and all of that, heck yeah, I just did that, and brought it home to be recharged after sleeping and eating, but recharged in a different way. Boost and leveled myself up in a different way to show up for my kids. Look how strong I am. Look what I'm capable of. Look what I can do. Look what I just did. I did that. I did that by saying yes, making a decision, following through, working through my nerves, then working through my pain. Let's be real. But then like just proving all of that, but just to be able to bring that home and like, one, share the trip with my kids to show them how cool and amazing it is and look at the places that you can explore. And two, when shit gets hard when you're a mom, because things do, or when it gets hard when you're co-parenting if you're divorced, or when it gets hard just because life in general, because things just happen. When you have those tools and when you know what you are capable of doing, you know that you can pull yourself out of it. You know that you can, how do I say this? Like, I knew that when stuff got hard, that I knew I could get through it. And I also proved to myself on the other side how amazing it felt, how amazing it was. And looking back now, during the time of this trip, when I'm paddling and cussing out the wind and all this stuff, am I like, oh, my transformation is going to be so great? No. I was like, I want to not paddle anymore. Like, I'm done paddling. I am over it. I'm done paddling. But after looking back, absorbing it, taking it in, taking a couple days to really have that all set in, then looking back, that's when I realized the growth. That's when I realized the leveling up. That's when I realized the heck yeah, I just did that. And I felt like a badass. And I loved it. I loved it. Like, I can be a badass, right? I love that trip. It was the transformation and growth and so much more. Fun with friends, meeting new people, sharing stories and just being silly. It was so great. It was so great. I hope that listening to this story and me taking you through the narrows and all of the nervous, excited feelings, and through a canyon and a river, through cursing out the wind in order to get out and get home, and what I got out of that trip, I hope that it gives you some fire and curiosity, as well as a boost to maybe your adventure side and being curious about that. So thank you for going on this trip with me, and let me know how it's helped you and what you loved about it. And I will chat with you soon. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, learned something new, or got some gems to take away that will boost your week. I release a new episode each week, so make sure to click that follow button to not miss what is coming next. If you love the show or want to share a story, send me a quick message. I love hearing from listeners. If you know someone who needs this episode in their life, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they would love you for it. If you are looking to connect more, check out the show notes for all the social links, my website. I would love to hear how this episode helped you and what you loved about it. If there's a topic you want to hear about, send that too. All right, ladies, now is the time to release your inner power.